Sometimes a person can't understand who he is without encountering his own past. Hassan usually went to his office in the morning in his private chauffeured car, but this morning was different. Again, that familiar tightness had settled on his throat. When he opened his eyes, he felt as if everything had lost its meaning. Just like that, without saying anything, he took off his simple suit in the back room and put on the cheap trousers and coat he bought at a Sunday. He just put coins in his pocket. No credit card, no wallet, no phone. He was going to run away today, too, from your own life. He left the security gate without even being seen by his own driver. He started walking towards one of the slums of the city. It was cold. The morning frost was cutting his face. But this strange feeling inside her was getting in the way of even the cold. Something was going to happen today. His heart was whispering this. He stood in front of a bakery with a spilled brown paint and a broken sign. There were one or two old women in the queue. Hassan got in line. The queue was moving slowly. An old radio was playing in the oven. The smell of bread surrounded the place like nostalgia. Just then, a young woman walked in. His hair was unkempt. He had a faded coat on. He approached the baker's counter with a timid attitude, whispered something without noticing anyone. The baker shook his head slightly, then bent down to the basket under the counter and took out some dry bread. The woman bowed her head as if thanking him and left. Quickly, without looking at anyone, Hassan couldn't take his eyes off that woman. There was shame in his eyes. No, it was not a shame that came from poverty. It was something else, a deeper, older sadness. "What are you doing, Hassan?" he muttered to himself. "You're just watching as usual." He went out angry with himself, but the woman had already disappeared from view. Then maybe he could go and do something. He would give her a bag full of fresh bread, maybe something else, but he did nothing. Just like he hasn't done many things in his past. When he returned home, the woman's eyes were not going out of his sight. He could not sleep that night, and that night he had that dream for the first time. The young woman was buying dry bread in the same oven in the same way. Hassan was watching again, but this time the dream continued. The woman got out, entered the narrow streets. Hassan followed him. They passed through dusty streets, made their way between decrepit walls. The woman finally entered an old shanty with a gray door. Hassan had woken up at that moment. His heart was beating fast. It was as if that house was real. He went out with the first light of the morning. It's that coat again. It's the same neighborhood again. He went to the bakery, bought 3 fresh loaves. Then he started walking, like in a dream. His heart was beating faster at every turn of the street. It was as if the dream had been a guide. And there, that corner, that door, that wall, it was real. He excitedly approached the door, held his breath for a few seconds. Then he plucked up courage and knocked on the door. A muffled sound came from inside. The door is open. He opened the door. It was an old, dim little house. He advanced into the room from which the sound had come. There was an old man sitting in the middle of the room. He was looking at Hassan. He froze. This guy, it seemed so familiar to him. But how? Neither of them could speak for a while. They looked eye to eye. Then Hassan's gaze shifted to the embroidered ring on the man's finger. In that moment, the bread in his hand fell to the ground. The outer door opened. The same woman came in. He had a bag in his hand. He approached the old man. "Are you all right, father?" he said. Then turned to Hassan and said, "Who is this gentleman?" he asked. Hassan's eyes were locked on the old man. Only one word poured from her trembling. "Lips, father." And at that moment, everything froze. Years, longings, pains. In silence, the old man answered with tears. That word had fallen into the house like a bomb. Dead. The young woman was frozen where she was. Hassan's eyes were still locked on the ring on the old man's hand. There was a small figure of a pine tree carved in the middle of a golden circle. He had seen the same figure on the finger of the man whose hand he had held as a child. That pine tree symbolized the little tree that they had cut down together from the forest during their poorest but happiest years. The old man's lips trembled. It was as if he had been silent for 1,000 years and didn't dare to say a word. Now, his eyes were fixed on the man standing opposite. Are you Hassan?" he said in a muffled voice. Hassan shook his head slowly. No one could speak for a few seconds. Time had stopped. Then the old man got up trembling, staggered a step. Hassan was thrown forward by reflex. They both hugged in the middle. The burden of the years, the questions that were never asked, the answers that were never given, flowed away in that hug. At that moment, only the heart was speaking. Time, distance, poverty, wealth, all were left out of this embrace. The young woman was watching in amazement. "Father, who's this one? Who really is this guy?" said the old man. His voice was muffled but peaceful. This is my son, the one I lost. My son who was forcibly taken away from me." The woman's eyes grew big. He dropped the bag in his hand. "Your son? Is this my brother?" At that moment, the last gap in Hassan's heart fell into place. This is the young woman, this shy-looking young woman buying dry bread. He was her brother. Years later, they met in the same neighborhood, in the same poverty. Fate had brought them together on the same street without them noticing. Hassan collapsed to the ground. He held his head with his hand. She cried quietly, deeply. He turned to his father. "Why did you leave me, father?" "Why?" said the old man. Stretched out his arm, gently sat down next to him. "I didn't leave you, my son. I just got desperate. When your mother died, I couldn't take care of both you and your brother. I had no job. I had no home. I didn't want you to fall into the street when they said they'd pick you up. They gave you up for adoption to a rich family so that you can have a better life. But I didn't know that they would forget you. They would tear you away from us." The woman sat quietly, tears streaming from her eyes. "I've never known you, brother, but I've been dreaming about a man for years. He always had his back turned, but there was a connection in me. I understand more." Hassan put his hand on his sister's shoulder. "I also didn't know why I came here, why I've always been drawn to these streets. It turns out my heart was looking for you." They talked for hours that day. Hassan asked the questions that had been accumulating for years. His father told me, crying, how he was left alone, how he worked day and night to raise his daughter, how he was always looking for his son, but he couldn't get a trace of him. Hassan told me how he grew up in luxury, but with an emotional barrenness, that the people who called him my family never showed him love, that everything but everything is missing. The woman, that is, Hassan's sister, said her name was Zara. She works for minimum wage in a textile workshop in the neighborhood, takes care of her father, and delivers meals to orphaned children with the remaining money in the evenings. Zara's heart was so pure that Hassan was ashamed of himself. His conscience was worth millions of his own. Hassan did not return to his home that night. He spent the morning in the same old house, in the cedar in his father's room. He looked at a faded photograph that had hung on the wall during the night. It was an old photo. There were 3 people, her father, her mother, and a baby on her lap, himself. There was a deleted date on the back of the photo, and underneath is a note written in his father's handwriting. "We will get together again. One day, Jack, maybe at the beginning of a street, maybe in a dream." As the morning sun filtered through the window of the old house, Hassan opened his eyes. There was peace in the room, but a mess inside. He put his hand to his forehead. His head ached. What he was thinking about last night had created a huge vortex in his mind. Dreams, Old photos, her father's voice, Zara's trembling lips. They were all passing before his eyes again, but the morning was peaceful. When he came down to the kitchen, Zara was preparing breakfast. Tea, olives, cheese on the table, but everything was simple. Hassan sat at the table, never spoke. Zara asked softly, "Are you all right, brother?" Hassan was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I feel like this in the morning for the first time in a very long time. It feels real." Zara smiled. "It's the truth anyway. You're in your own house. You're in your own family. We don't need anything you have, as long as you're here." These words warmed Hassan's insides, but at the same time caused him to face an embarrassment. He had become the owner of an entire empire, but he had lost his soul, your conscience, your roots. In fact, he has never had any money to buy love. After breakfast, Hassan sat in his father's old living room. He looked around. Yellowed newspapers on the walls, an old radio, a patched-up rug on the floor, but everything was sincere. Everything had happened. At that moment, the phone in his pocket rang. He was looking for the secretary. "Sir, there is a board meeting today." The lawyers came too. "In addition, investors from abroad are waiting for you." Hassan bowed his head forward. "I can't come today. Cancel the meeting and tell the lawyers to postpone it." The secretary was stunned. "Sir, investors were very important. Have more important things to do," Hassan said in a determined voice, and he hung up the phone. Zara put her head out of the room. "Your place of business, yes. But they're not everything anymore." Zara averted her eyes. "Can I have a request?" said. "Of course. Say whatever you want," Hassan said immediately. "You know those kids in our neighborhood, who don't have parents? Help comes to them once a year. That's not enough either. Maybe you can do something." Hassan's face became serious. Without taking his eyes off Zara, he said sincerely, "I will." That afternoon, Hassan went for a walk in the neighborhood. He passed through old, narrow streets. When the children saw him, they looked at him with curious eyes. Torn jerseys, holey shoes, but there was light in his eyes. He went to the old school in the neighborhood. He introduced himself to the manager and said he wanted to help. The manager was puzzled. "Really?" said. "So far, there has not been a business person who has come here and offered to help." Hassan shook his head. "I want to do something permanent here. It's not just help. Educational support, health, food, even psychological support." The manager thanked him with his eyes full. "This neighborhood will never forget you." But Hassan was just getting started. When he returned to his house on the evening of the same day, there was someone waiting for him. The vice chairman of the board of directors of the company is Bahadur. His tie was loosened. His face was tense. "You have forgotten us, Mr. Hassan. At today's meeting, investors waited. The partners are worried." "What kind of mood is this?" Hassan replied quite calmly. "I am living the real life, Bahadur. I'm breathing for the first time in a long time." "Let me breathe a little." Bahadur frowned. "These conversations are not pleasant. If things work out that way, shareholders may have to make some decisions." Hassan stood up. His eyes were steady. "Make those decisions. But I think that I should no longer direct the company to me, but my company. So things are going to change." Bahadur left in anger, but Hassan was comfortable inside. When night came, he sat down to a table with Zara and his father again. Potted food, bread, pickles. But the heart is full of peace. As Zara got up from the table, she handed an envelope to Hassan. "My mother wrote this many years ago, just before he passed away." Dad always hid it. Hassan opened the envelope with trembling hands. "My Hassan, maybe one day you will read this letter. They took you away from us so that your life would be good, but we've always loved you. I know you'll be back one day. Your heart will bring you. If you are reading these lines, the family has forgiven you, and you should forgive yourself too, because no wealth can replace the love of a son. There was a note at the end of the letter. Love your father. Protect your sister. And stay human, Haseen. Stay human. Haseen could not hold back the tears. That night, Haseen was truly reborn. Zara had gone to the bakery early in the morning. Haseen was sitting in the garden. His father was watching his son from behind the window with old eyes. He was proud, but there was a bitterness in him because he had carried the burden of the past alone for many years. He believed that now it was time to put another piece of that burden on his son's shoulders. Haseen, he said, going down to the garden with heavy steps and approaching him. May I have a word? Haseen shook his head. Of course, father. The old man sat down on a stool. He put his hands on his knees and took a deep breath. Zara, she's a strong girl, but she went through a lot as a child. After the death of your mother, I was working, and he stretched out his arms to his brother, but there was something he was hiding from us. I found out years later, but it was too late then. Haseen, attention has been stopped. Something like what? At the age of 14, he started working at a bakery in the neighborhood. The owner of the bakery, he was married, but he would not let Zara out of his sight. Later, Zara left the oven. After a few months, I noticed that he had changed. He became silent. She started crying at night. Later, I found out that the man had tried to approach Zara by force. Haseen clenched his fists. His throat was knotted. That man, where is he now? He has moved out of the city. We covered up the incident so as not to tarnish Zara's name. But since that day, Zara has developed both a hatred and an obsession for bakeries. He always set up the same type of oven, the same smells, the same layout. It's like he wants to take something back. But then, too, he always ran away from love. Haseen's eyes were filled. This darkness behind Zara's smiling face burned her inside. At that moment, he realized that his brother's smile was just a veil that he had covered over the suffering. Just then, a notification came to the phone. It was from the former company partner, Bahadjour. The extraordinary board of directors will meet tomorrow at 10 Trout. If you disagree, we will remove you from the presidency. The shareholders don't want to see you in the company anymore. Haseen quietly put the phone in his pocket. He turned to his father. I don't care what they think, but you, Zara, and I won't let the neighborhood down. That night, Zara returned late from the bakery. It was covered in flour, but there was a twinkle in his eye. Haseen asked, looking into her eyes, Zara, do you want to share your past with me? Zara stopped for a moment. His shoulders slumped. It was as if a burden he had been carrying on his back for years had suddenly become heavier. He sat down in the chair, bowed his head. Brother, I know Dad told you about it. I'm not ashamed of what happened to me, but there are things I should be ashamed of. That day, that guy. I had to shut up because no one heard my voice. I didn't have a mother. My father was working, you weren't there, and then that man left. But it stayed in me. Haseen bowed his head. I would like to find out who did this to you, but I know that your recovery will not be through my revenge. How can I help you, Zara? Zara took a deep breath. I want to establish a bakery workshop for women in this neighborhood. Let them learn a profession and stand on their own feet. Will you support me? Until the end, Haseen said decisively. The next day, Haseen decided to go to the company. He wore a simple suit over it. He didn't use his car. He used a car. When he entered the company, he had difficulty recognizing the security guards. The beard on his face, his simple clothes. That old Haseen was gone. There was silence when he entered the meeting room. The managers, investors, lawyers around the table were looking at him like ice. Bahadjour stood up. Welcome back. You've kept us waiting for a long time. Haseen sat down in the chair. I have not come to keep you waiting, but to watch. This company has turned into a structure burning with profit ambition. You have destroyed man, conscience, compassion. I saw it more clearly when I was away. One of the investors decamped. We need numbers, not emotional speeches. Hassim smiled. Let me give you a figure. There are 200 children living in this neighborhood every year without help. 90 women are working under economic violence. But now 10% of this company will be transferred to these neighborhoods, children, women, because I'm still the president and I have the power to make this decision. It's a mess. Bahadur stood up angrily. You can't do such a thing. I can, because I still own the majority of the shares, and if I can't change this company, I'm going to sell them all and bury this money on the streets. At least one more child won't go to bed hungry. The meeting fell into silence. The same night, Zara received a phone call. The caller was an elderly woman from her old neighborhood. Zara, my daughter, that old baker guy. He's back in the neighborhood. He's asking for you. Be careful. Girl, be careful. Zara's hand began to shake in a shadow. He was looking at Zara from the bottom of the electricity pole in front of the oven. The night was quiet. The street lamps of the neighborhood were lit with a flickering jaundice. The wind was tossing garbage left and right. Zara, who was looking out of the oven window, was rubbing her hands under the influence of the phone she had just received. His eyes became fixated on the shadow moving at the foot of the lamppost. He felt an indescribable shudder run through him. When Hassim came to Zara, he frowned when he saw her like this. Has something happened? Zara shook her head. They called from the neighborhood. That guy, he's the old baker. He's back here. He was asking about me. I don't know why he came back, but there's something wrong with me. Hassim stood up. Give me your name. No, Zara said, raising her voice for the first time. I won't let you get blood on your hands. Even if he deserves it, I will no longer live in fear of him. But I'm not going to run away this time either. Anger flashed in Hassim's eyes, but he respected his brother's determination. All right, but you're not alone. I will protect you no matter what. The next morning, someone left a black envelope on the oven window. There was an old photo in the envelope. Zara in front of the bakery, 14 years old. That's the guy behind him and a note in the envelope. Let's talk about our unfinished business. Ibid, the same clock. Zara's eyes misted up while holding this note in her hand. So he's still living with the same arrogance. He still thinks I'm scared. Hassim took the note, read it out of the corner of his eye. He will come there, but he will find me, not you. Zara shook her head from side to side. No, this is my past. I'll face it. That evening, they met in front of the abandoned old bakery outside the neighborhood. Hassim was watching a little behind from behind a tree. The man was a man who walked with a cane. His face was wrinkled now, but his eyes were still shining with the same furtive gaze. You've grown up, he said, but your eyes are still the same. Zara stood upright. My childhood has been ruined because of you, but I'm not afraid of you anymore. I give hope to women in this neighborhood without being overshadowed by people like you. The man approached. I didn't hurt you, only I cared about you a little too much. Zara clenched her teeth. Your sense of value is like a rotten apple. You poisoned everything you came near. The man burst out laughing. You are still weak. It's just that your tongue has grown, but your soul is still that little girl. Just at that moment, Hassim quickly appeared. The man drew back in surprise. You will never get so close to you again, Hassim said. We told the police everything. The women in the neighborhood will also complain. There's no one to protect you anymore. The man raised his cane, tried to attack, but Hassim reflexively grabbed the cane and pressed it down hard. The man fell to the ground. Zara leaned over to the man's face. I don't pity you because I couldn't even touch myself for years because of you. But now I'm looking at your face and saying goodbye to my past." The man was handcuffed when the cops arrived. Hassin and Zara sat in silence for a long time on the sidewalk opposite the bakery. In the silence of the night, there was only the palpitation of their hearts. The next morning, Zara started to set up the bakery workshop together with the women, young girls, old women, widows in the neighborhood. They all gathered around Zara. They were no longer kneading the dough with flour, but with hope. Hassin, watching them from a distance, his father came to him. "I'm proud of you, my son, but what are you going to do for yourself?" Hassin bowed his head. "I don't know yet, Dad. It's like something's missing." That deficiency was inside a small library that was just opened in the neighborhood a few days later. A young woman had set up the library together with the women of the neighborhood. She was a woman with blunt hair, glasses, smelling of books. When Hassin came in, he made eye contact with that woman. The woman smiled. "Are you looking for a book or yourself?" Hassin was surprised. The woman held it out, smiling. "Those who can't hold on, maybe you'll find yourself." Hassin got up early in the morning. Zara had already opened the oven door and started to ferment the dough. The neighborhood had not yet woken up from its slumber. The silence was a reflection of a new peace that had enveloped Hassin in recent days. He no longer had nightmares at night. He did not wake up in the morning with that overwhelming emptiness in his heart. But still, something inside of him didn't quite fit into place. As he sat in front of the oven and slowly ate the hot cake that Zara gave him for breakfast, his eye fell on the children in the neighborhood. Before, he would stay away from them, not even look at their faces. Now he is watching them with a sincere smile, thinking about his own childhood. His own childhood had passed through his life like a faint, incomplete, unwanted shadow. Zara closed the oven a little early that day. He approached Hassin with a file in his hand. "Someone from the municipality left this yesterday. It's about you." Hassin took the file. Inside, there were a number of official documents from previous years, population records, and several old letters. One of them was an official correspondence belonging to the adoption process of Hassin many years ago. A note was attached at the U bottom of the page. After the application made by Zara's mother to the social services about the child, the father of the child was voluntarily handed over. It is known that her mother was excluded from the process due to her health condition. Hassin's throat was knotted. "So, my mother, there really was, he was alive." Zara averted her eyes. "I heard something from my mother, but I didn't understand it when I was a child, and I didn't know who you were back then either." Hassin read the documents over and over again. Each sentence illuminated another corner of his life, shed light on the dark points of the past. Her mother was not dead. He just hadn't been able to get through the years, and now there wasn't even a chance of reaching that woman anymore because the note at the bottom of the document had the following sentence. "Information has been received that he was buried in the cemetery of the orphans during his period of illness." Hassin collapsed into a chair. "I've been looking for years. He died and left without ever knowing her. I've never been able to forgive him either." Zara remained silent. His eyes were full too. "Maybe he has forgiven you, brother. Maybe he never blamed you because love sometimes forgives without speaking." Hassin wiped away tears. Somewhere inside him, he cracked with that sentence. Through the cracks, a light that had been waiting for years was filtering in. That night, Hassin went for a walk alone. The old garbage pile on the edge of the neighborhood was cleaned up, and a small park was built in its place. He sat on the bench. He raised his head to the sky. The moon was hazy, but it was still there. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Mother, I've never known you, but I've always been there."